Good morning to you. It's a winsome Wednesday morning, the 7th of May, and if you've joined us, you have joined the fifth connection where we are we are talking through the storyline of the letter that Paul writes to the assembly at Philippi. And he is careful to note that he fills this pie with the mind of Christ. It is about mindfulness. And as we said yesterday, don't get switched off by that word and commit the genetic fallacy, because you say, wow, it comes from paganism, it comes from the East, so it can't be right. All truth is God's truth wherever it is found and wherever it takes us. So we are going to be walking through the content of the 4 chapters. It's 104 verses of the story, and since our cognitive ability is meshed inside of stories, and because that is how our brains work, our minds work, the two are not synonymous terms. The brain functions in terms of its left, what I call the Luciferian left hemisphere, in connection with the refreshing right hemisphere, and together they paint a picture. They represent reality. The right presents reality. The left presents reality. And the right hemisphere is holistic. It pans for the landscape. It zooms out constantly to give us the big picture, while the left zooms in and cuts in and sometimes wants to restrict what the right does. With all that in mind, let's walk through briefly, in the time that we have, the content, an overview of the content of the 104 verses of the storyline. When you look at the storyline, you become very aware very quickly that there is a crux, there is a nexus that the writer is exploring. Because from the get-go, it's going to be highlighting the issue of the mind of Christ, what mindfulness is, what it looks like, what our responsibility in regards to mindfulness is all about, and how we relate in our world according to this criteria, according to the mind of Christ. So that is what I would call the story of all stories. The mother of all stories comes up in chapter 2, verse 1 to verse 11. And it is around this core that the fabric of the book is spun. All 4 chapters. Please note, the scriptures wasn't written in terms of book, chapter, and verse. It was written to an audience in terms of a letter with an unfolding story. And what is important to notice is that verse 1 and 2 starts out with a word of grace. And the letter takes its time meandering and wandering through what mindfulness is all about, and ends up with a word of grace in verse 23 of chapter 4. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with your spirit. And so mindfulness is a strategic, intentional focus that we have. We are called upon to pay attention. Be mindful has to do with paying attention, focused attention. Because whatever you attend to changes your world and changes the world. And the reason for that is whenever you focus onto something and you're paying attention to it, your mental architecture, your mental machinery zooms in and fixes on a particular aspect of what you're looking at. Look across a landscape. Look at a sunrise or watch a sunrise and watch a sunset and watch how your mind gravitates to something specific in that sunset. The red hot heat of the blazing ball on the horizon as it drops below that horizontal line. And so when we look at this story, we see it starts out in chapter 1, the whole of the chapter. The verse lines of the story, they are tracking tribal relationality, because mindfulness has to do with tribal relationality, relationships within a tribal grouping. Whatever that tribal grouping is, that's where relationships happen. And relationality is a tripartite entity or aspect. It's got one person, and then another person, and then the third aspect, which is the relationship, the in-betweenness between person one and person two. You will notice trinities and triplications such as this across God's creation. If you were but just to look for it, they start popping up all over the place. So this Trinitarian idea, while it is a biblical idea, an idea which rocks up in the text of Scripture, it's also a concept which rocks up in creation. So tribal relationality. What's tribal relationality all about? Well, mindfulness inspires connections, connections between human beings, between people. So there's a tribal relationality. And then we see in the second chapter of the unfolding story that mindfulness not only sparks tribal relationality, it sparks modal cruciformity. Now, don't get switched off and don't run from the descriptor. Modal cruciformity. Mindfulness impacts on our existence. It impacts on our way of being. That's a mode, a way of being, B-E-I-N-G. And this way of being for the follower of the way is cruciform. When you look at the word, you see crux. At the heart of the word is the word crux, cruciform. And crux means cross. It is a cross. Modal cruciformity has to do with a way of being which has to do with crucifixion and being crucified and living in a cruciform kind of way. You're going to see that unfold in chapter 2, because modal cruciformity is what ignites cognition. A way of being that saturates our minds, that is inspired by order, disorder, and reorder. Because that's how life happens. Moves from order to disorder to reorder. Or have you never experienced pain and challenges and obstacles in your life? Then you know what the yin and yang of life has to do with. Order out of chaos. But it is order, then chaos, and then reorder. It's the picture that the scriptures talks about as life, death, and resurrection. And that's not a foreign idea to us. Resurrection isn't a foreign idea to us. You ever watch what happens to a seed when you drop it into the earth and you water it? And the fingers of the warmth and the moisture get to that seed and it resurrects. All of a sudden, it springs to life. So it's not all that foreign of an idea. Mindfulness inspires connections, but it also ignites cognition. It has to do with firing our modal existence, which for Christians would be cruciform. Then, as we move into chapter 3, we see that mindfulness as a way of inhibiting participation, because there are some dangerous participations that we encounter across our lifetime. And that's where fatal ideology comes in. Mindfulness fuels tribal relationality. It fuels modal cruciformity, but it inhibits fatal ideology, because an ideology is an idolatry, listen to me now, an idolatry of ideas. If you have not forgotten the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. And in Western culture, while we would not carve out an image and worship at its feet, we have many ideas that have become idolatrous to our thinking. We have set them up and we worship those ideas, those systems. Any ism is an idolatry. ISM, it's an ideology. And we worship at the feet of those ideologies. Could be Marxism, could be capitalism, socialism. And then inside the believing community, we have so many of these ideologies. We've got Arminianism. Yes, you guessed right. We've got Calvinism. We've got all kinds of isms that we worship at. You see, I think Jung is right. Carl Jung said, people don't have ideas, but ideas have people. And mindfulness, as a way, if it's exercised in the right way, from the proper basis, it will curtail ideologies that are fatal to our way of thinking and our way of living. So it inspires connections. Mindfulness ignites cognition. Mindfulness inhibits participation in fatal ideologies. And then in chapter 4, the unfolding story talks about mindfulness inviting compensation. It invites compensation. There are payoffs and good positive benefits to biblical mindfulness, because it has a beneficial utility. When I am pondering and spending time bathing and saturating myself in the scriptures is the point. Not bathing myself in stories that I hear on the street, or movies that I watch, or conversations that I'm constantly given to. It's the scriptures which is at the center of mindfulness. Pondering it, swimming in it, saturating myself inside of it. And so each of the chapters nicely adds these ideas. Mindfulness is what inspires connections. It ignites cognition. It inhibits harmful participations in ideology, and it invites benefits. It invites compensation. It's got good payoffs and payouts. And if you could keep that little structure in your mind as you read through the text, it will be helpful as we unpack the story line by line. I remember the scriptures wasn't written verse by verse. We have this way of saying very sanctimoniously, oh, we listen to verse by verse exposition of the biblical text. And we hide behind expository verse by verse explications of the scriptures. Well, it's written as an unfolding story. And you need to get the drift of the story as it flows out of the 104 verses, 4 chapters. And the subject is mindfulness. Let this mind be in you. And you are going to become aware very quickly that we need to be thinking with a brain in mind. There are the 3 aspects: thinking, 1, brain, 2, mind, number 3. Thinking with the brain in mind. God hasn't called you to put your brain in a parking meter and let someone else think for you, or let your spiritual guru think for you, or let the shaman in your community think and pontificate for you, or let the pastor think for you. You know, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's where things get tacky, because we all have these mental gurus. Dr. So and so, Pastor so and so. Well, beloved, the last time I checked, the scriptures is the authority. No man, no creed, no confession of faith, no statement of faith takes the place of the scriptures. And on this channel, we want to make every effort not to be caught in an ideology or denominational framework or a confession of faith, nor a creed. We want to look at the naked scriptures and see, what does the text say? If the text doesn't say it, you've got no business importing ideas foreign to what the text is saying, whether it's a singular verse or a paragraph or a book of the Bible or the scriptures. What does the text say? Not what does the Bible teach? Bible doesn't teach anything. It's teachers who teach. But what's the text doing? The text is saying something. saying. Keep that in mind. The text is saying something. And as we study, the question ought to be, what does the text say? Not what does the preacher say that the text says? Now, keep that in mind, because all of us fall foul in this particular area, because constantly quoting others, isn't it? As if quoting the hall aflame by name dropping common teachers and preachers and what commentaries have to say. We think that bolsters our case. The issue is still singular. What does the text say? And so, as we walk this journey through the 104 verses of the unfolding story, keep that in mind. What does the text say about mindfulness that inspires connections, that ignites cognition, and inhibits participation in skewed thinking and ideological ways of relating through the biblical text? And then also look at how it invites great payoffs when we do this naked kind of thinking, leaving our systems at the door and thinking through, what is God saying? I cannot emphasize that enough for us as we listen, and for myself as I look at the text and what it says. And so we're going to continue in the next episode unpacking these 4 chapters as to what mindfulness is, what it looks like, and what it's designed to do to followers of the way. I trust that you would have a good day as you go with God. Goodbye for now.